Hey everybody, welcome back to the Super Bake Podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Super Bake Podcast. So yeah, it's crazy that we're at this episode now. Been doing this show for about 2.5 years now, I think. So yeah, I'm happy that I've gotten this far. I definitely can plan on continuing this, so for as long as I possibly can. So what better way to celebrate the 100th episode than giving my review for the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie that just came out. Spoiler alert, as always. First, I'm just going to get into the plot real quick. So the plot in this one, Deadpool is basically recruited by the TVA, which if you've seen the series Loki on Disney+, you'll know about them, the organization that travels between different universes, different timelines, and keeps a close eye on things. They've basically recruited Deadpool to move into what they call the sacred timeline, because in this movie, his timeline is basically dying. The reason being is the anchor of his timeline, who was Wolverine from the movie Logan, is gone. And as they explain, whenever the anchor of a timeline passes, that timeline will slowly start to diminish. So in order to save his timeline and everyone in it, Deadpool has to find a new Logan by traveling to other universes, other multiverses, to try to recruit them. And so he teams up with the Logan in this movie, who is considered to be the worst Logan in the entire multiverse. And the two of them have to work together to stop the TVA, who is led by, or at least this part of the TVA is led by the villain played by Matthew Macfadyen from Succession, the character named Paradox, and then also the other villain of the movie named Cassandra Nova, the sister of Charles Xavier, who plays like the secondary antagonist in this movie. So we get to see Deadpool and Wolverine finally team up in this film. So right off the bat, I am going to say that overall, I really liked this movie a lot. Like, I've really enjoyed the Deadpool movies. It's been a while since we had the last one. I think the last one came out in, 2018? So it's been a little bit since we've seen a Deadpool film. And they announced this, almost 2 years ago. So it's kind of surreal that we're at the point where we're watching a new Deadpool movie again. It almost doesn't feel real watching this film. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I'll get into, kind of the things I liked about it and the things I didn't like about it. But going into it, I always know that I'm going to have a good time watching Deadpool in these films. One, because he always shits on the other Marvel films, which there's plenty of that in this movie too. One thing they do in this that I really appreciated was that they kind of acknowledge the fact that Marvel's kind of put out some stinkers lately. Like the multiverse saga with the MCU hasn't been the best. There's been a few good movies here and there. I thought Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was good, but it had a lot of missed opportunities. I love Into the Spider-Verse. Those films I think are really good. I liked Spider-Man Far From Home. Is that the one that had Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in it? I believe that was. Yeah, I really liked that movie. I'm kind of over the multiverse stuff, to be honest. It feels like it's been played out so much in so much other media, like Rick and Morty, and then of course you see the Loki series and stuff. There's so much, it's in everything now. It just feels like I feel like it's run its course, and hopefully we're kind of starting to move away from that a little bit in the MCU. But I do like that this movie, while having elements of the multiverse in it, it still kind of shits on it too, which I thought was really funny. I do want to get into it just a little bit. There's a lot of cameos in this movie. I'm not going to spoil all of them just because I want you guys to kind of see them for yourself, because there's some really satisfying ones. The big ones I don't really want to get into, but they're really good. I'll talk about a couple, just a couple that I really liked. I don't know if these are ones that have been spoiled on the internet or not, but I'll talk about them just very briefly. But anyways, yeah, I'll kind of get into some of the things that I liked about it real quick. Overall, it's Deadpool. It's a fun movie. The opening musical sequence is hilarious. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it was, in my opinion, I think it may have been my favorite opening sequence of all three Deadpool movies. It was so batshit nuts and over the top. Just, again, I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you've seen the movie Logan, I think you'll appreciate it. I don't know, it's so messed up and hilarious at the same time that it's hard not to laugh your ass off at it. Everybody in my theater was just busting out laughing at this scene, so I thought it was fantastic. But yeah, like it's the usual shenanigans with Deadpool, a lot of the fourth wall jokes. Like I said, he really pokes fun at the whole multiverse angle. You get to see a lot of really fun cameos that I'm sure people who are fans of the comics are going to really appreciate in here. I didn't read them, so some of these probably went over my head, but I thought it was really fun, like how they were able to use the multiverse to bring a lot of interesting characters into this one. Like one cameo that really surprised me was Chris Evans shows up in this. And I thought he was playing Captain America, but instead he actually reprises his role as the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four movies. And the funny thing is, the movie actually does a good job of kind of pulling the rug out from under both the audience and Deadpool, because Deadpool kind of thinks the same thing. Like Deadpool thinks that he's Captain America as well. And I don't know, it leads to a really funny sequence with him and like one of the villains, Cassandra Nova. So again, I'm not going to give away too much there, but it's a funny little scene that they do. The other cameo that I really enjoyed in this was Henry Cavill plays a version of Wolverine. There's a scene where Deadpool is going between different multiverses trying to find a Wolverine to recruit. And this is one of the parts where I think people who have read the comics will really appreciate the little nods and references they make there. Like even as somebody who never really read Marvel Comics, I was seeing images where I was thinking like, that looks like the cover of a comic book page. So I think some people out there are probably going to get the reference when they see it. But yes, Henry Cavill plays one of the variants of Wolverine. And I gotta say, if this is truly the last time that Hugh Jackman is playing the role, I think Henry Cavill might have a shot at it. He looks pretty good in the Wolverine getup. Like he's got the chops. He's kind of built like Wolverine too. So like, I mean, granted, he's a pretty tall guy, I think, but because I think Wolverine in the comics is supposed to be pretty small, which they do poke fun at that in this movie too, which that got a big laugh out of the audience, at least in the theater that I was in. So yeah, like that was also a really fun cameo. Like I want to talk about them, but again, I feel like if you don't know about them going into them, like the other cameos in this movie, I think it almost works better. I will say this though, I think this film might work a little bit better if you've seen not necessarily every Marvel movie up to this point, but I think that if you are at least familiar with them, and especially I would say the Multiverse Saga movies, I think some of the references in here might make a little bit more sense to you. Like I feel like if somebody came into this and had never seen the Captain America movies, or if they had never seen like the Fantastic Four movies and didn't know Chris Evans played that role, they might not get the reference there. But regardless, I mean, there's a lot of fun cameos in this movie. I'm not going to go into them too much. But yeah, that was really fun. It kind of feels like it's just sort of fan service the movie in many ways. Another positive about this movie is Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds as the two main characters. The two of them have been promoting the hell out of this movie, and it really shows that they care about this because like the two of them play off each other so well, especially Hugh Jackman. Like some of his big emotional scenes in this movie, like the guy he's swinging for the fences in this movie, and he didn't have to. He could have just phoned in his performance and it would have been fine. But man, like the bigger emotional moments in this film, I think really hit hard because of the fact that he's clearly giving his all. Like with his Wolverine, like to kind of get into his backstory a little bit, like the reason he's considered the worst one in the multiverse is because he let his team down. Like he was out getting pissed drunk while his team was getting attacked by humans. And then when he came back and found out, he just went nuts. And so you can see like the guilt that he's carried with him because of his failure to protect his team and also to protect the humans, because that's a big part of what the X-Men do. So like you can see like Jackman has gone to great lengths to try to like really show not just the depth of this character, but also just the turmoil that he's going through trying to juggle this. And it's a good counterbalance, I think, to Deadpool with his shenanigans in this movie. Like it leads to some pretty decent heartfelt moments. Like that's one of the things I like about Jackman's performance in this is that it's, for the most part, it's played completely 100% straight. Whereas Deadpool is for the most part making jokes. So they're a nice balance to one another. Another thing I like about this movie is just in typical Deadpool fashion, it's got some really cool action sequences. Like we finally get to see Deadpool and Wolverine fight. There's a scene where they end up in the void and we get to see them finally have their big fight. And Deadpool even kind of like, nods to the audience, as if letting us know like, oh yeah, this is really happening. So all the action scenes in this movie are fantastic. Like there's some pretty effective gory scenes too in this movie. One of them involving the villain Cassandra, which again I don't want to spoil too much there, but yeah, like there's some really cool fight scenes in this movie, some cool like team ups too, like characters kind of going at it that maybe you hadn't really considered before. Like there's one in particular that fights Chris Evans' character that, again, without giving too much away, when I saw the fight, I remember just kind of thinking like, oh yeah, that would make sense that his character would be able to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of moments like that too. Like just all the action scenes are really great. They do a good job of being funny at times, but also being serious when they need to be. Great action scenes. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. As far as like negatives go, like as far as any criticisms go in the movie, one thing I would definitely say is like, I was a little disappointed in that a lot of the main characters from the first two movies, like Colossus and Negasonic, they don't really have much of a role in this. They're only in like the beginning of the film, and they really only have like maybe one or two lines of dialogue, and that's really it. Like, we get to see a little bit of Peter's character from Deadpool 2, and he's funny, he gets some good laughs, but for the most part, a lot of the characters that were a big part of the first two films really don't have anything to do in this one, which was a little disappointing, especially since it feels like this movie is really all about cameos and stuff and Easter eggs, so I guess I get that they can only fit so much in there, but I would have liked if, at least Colossus, I really like his character. And since there's another version of Juggernaut in this movie, it would have been cool if we could have gotten Colossus to maybe fight this one too, since he fought him in Deadpool 2. So I don't know. It just, that kind of felt like a missed opportunity to me. So I would have liked it if we could have gotten more of that. Another criticism I have is with Hugh Jackman's character in this film, we learn about his past through dialogue, but we don't really see like clips of what happened. We don't get to see like the fight that happened. We don't get to see like the flashback of his team getting killed and him coming back and finding them. It's all explained to us in a scene between his character and Cassandra Nova when she's prodding his mind. And it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jackman's performance, I think his emotional performance helps give it weight, but it would have been nice if we could have at least seen it. I would have liked to have seen it like played out, like maybe like from the comic Old Man Logan when he's brainwashed into killing the X-Men. If it could have been something like that, just to add a little bit more emotional weight to his character, it just feels like a lot of it's just explained to us, but we never really experience it firsthand through that character's eyes. I think that would have really helped to give his performance more depth and really help us feel for him. It's not to say that it doesn't work. I just think it would have helped elevate the character a little bit more and making us feel for him, especially since, like I said, this is supposed to be the worst Wolverine in the multiverse. So yeah, I mean, that's another slight criticism I have for the movie. As far as the length of the film goes, I think it's around 2 hours long or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it does start to feel a little bit long towards the end, but I'm not going to dock the film too much for that because I think for the most part it flows pretty well. And there is a funny little nod from Deadpool where he actually says, like, he actually acknowledges the length of the film. Like, towards the end, he actually tells the audience, like, yeah, we're close to the end, I promise. So it's kind of like the filmmakers knew, like, they were really kind of pushing the envelope with it. So, again, it's not really, the length of the movie is not really an issue for me in this one. I know I usually complain about that in some other movies that I watch, like when they start to overstay their welcome a little bit, but in this case, it didn't bother me that much. But yeah, as far as like final thoughts in this movie goes, yeah, this is, to me, if this is supposed to be the last time Ryan Reynolds is playing Deadpool and Hugh Jackman is playing Wolverine, I think that this is a really fantastic way to cap off their respective stories. I do think overall, I did see Logan, and I do think that was probably the better send-off for the Wolverine character for Jackman, but I think this was also a nice, fun way to end his character too, bring him back for one last big fight, and just kind of send him on his way in a way that felt at least a little bit dignified. One thing I definitely want to say too is at the end of the movie, in the end credits, they play a reel of behind-the-scenes footage from the old X-Men movies from the 2000s, where Jackman first got started with the role. They also play clips from X-Men Origins Wolverine, I think, because I believe that was the movie where they first introduced Deadpool, the bad version of Deadpool, played by Ryan Reynolds. And man, it's crazy seeing this footage of these actors. Because, back then, Jackman, I mean, he's like in his mid-50s now, but back then he was like, in his early 30s or something, and like you can tell it's him, but like he's so much younger that it's really weird. And it's crazy to see just how far along he's come in that role, because that was really kind of the role that made him a household name. Before that, I don't really know like that anybody knew who he was. I know I certainly didn't. And now he is Wolverine. So also something else that I have to say too in this movie, we do finally get to see him don the Wolverine getup. He puts on the costume and including the mask, like from the comics and from like the animated series. And man, seeing him in that costume, I was afraid it was going to look really goofy, but once he puts it on and actually starts talking, and especially when he says the word bub, I was like, man, Hugh Jackman really is Wolverine. He always will be Wolverine to me. Like, regardless of who they cast as Wolverine in future films, like, to me, Hugh Jackman will always be the quintessential Wolverine, at least in my book. And just, there's a scene where he and Deadpool are fighting a bunch of other Deadpools, multiverse. I'm not going to get into it too much. Just go watch the movie. You'll see what I mean. But he's in the full Wolverine costume, and just seeing those two fighting together, just tearing their enemies apart, was like, when I saw that, I was like, this is awesome. At that point, that was when I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about logic. I didn't care about the fact that they're fighting a bunch of Deadpools, so obviously they're going to come back to life. It was just, I was having so much fun watching that action scene that I didn't give a shit about anything else. And I think that's the best way I can describe this movie, is it's just fun. It's a fun movie. It's not meant to be taken too seriously. It's obviously poking fun at other Marvel properties, including Sony properties, Fox and Sony properties, because I think that's what Fantastic Four belongs to, or the movies at least. So yeah, like it's just a movie that I think you can go in and just have a good time watching it. And it gave me what I wanted. It gave me more Deadpool. It gave me Wolverine. We finally get to see Wolverine tearing people up alongside Deadpool, so that was fun. Like, this is what I wanted from the movie. Like, is it the movie that's going to save the MCU? I think that's what I've been hearing a lot of people say, like, oh, is this a movie that's going to save the MCU? Like, I don't think this is that movie, but I don't think it was ever trying to be that kind of movie. To me, Deadpool has always been the character he's existed outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, he's part of it, but he's also kind of off on his own adventures. He's not really part of the Avengers. Like, there's hints of it in this movie, but like, I kind of feel like it's more for a joke, not like something that they're seriously considering for future films. But yeah, like, I just think if you go into this movie just expecting to have a good time, to see Deadpool doing what he does best, I think you're going to enjoy it just fine. But this is not the movie that's going to like revitalize the MCU. This is a movie that to me it's always going to exist kind of outside of the MCU, but also sort of like an accompanying property, if that makes sense. But for my money, I think that this is a fantastic movie. As far as how I think it stacks up against the other two Deadpool movies, honestly, that's tough to say. I still think maybe the first Deadpool is my favorite overall, but I would definitely put this one as a very close second. I guess the only reason why is because the first one does feel a little bit more grounded, whereas this one feels like they're kind of going more for just like the cameos, and that's more of the focus rather than the story and the characters, especially Deadpool, which is, he's kind of the main reason you come see this movie. So I guess for me, probably I like the first one just slightly more than this one. But one thing I want to make clear, though, is all three movies, in my opinion, are really good. And I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I would put this at a very close second. But yeah, I think this is a great movie. If it's the last movie in the Deadpool series, I think it's a fantastic way to end it. And I strongly recommend it, for sure. All right, everyone. I think that's going to conclude tonight's episode. Once again, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube, so if you like what you heard, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. Later.